Okay, Android Studio not installed.
Uh,
Um,
no, excuse me.
yeah.
Yeah, for that I'll just paste a code in the chat. Just run that. It will get fixed.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, Irish,
Yeah.
I'm having issues with the license thing. I tried 2 3 ways. It's not getting fixed.
Um, there's a command Flutter licenses, and did you run that?
Yeah, that licensing, no Android license.
Yep.
Yeah, it says something's wrong with the Java main thread.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That is a problem in the latest and Flutter version.
Yeah,
Like
I
even
tried
I have that.
switching that tools to latest or latest to tools. Still, it isn't working.
Yeah. That is a problem with Flutter current version. Even I have that. So if I do Flutter Doctor,
So
uh,
that doesn't matter, right?
no, everything will work.
Yeah, cool.
So see, even I'll get the same error. That is error with the Flutter's latest version or something. I'm not sure, but yeah, that is cool. That won't affect anything.
I will wait for another like 4 minutes and start by 5:10. Hello everyone. So I think we'll start the event now. So hi. So this is our first Flutter event. I'm Nitya, and I mean the turnout's been pretty great. So as you know, ISSA is collaborating with the Google Developers Group Mysuru for this event. And I would like to thank Usha ma'am, first of all, who is the lead for Google Developers Club Mysuru. And I would like to thank her for helping us putting together this event. And as you all know, it's a 3-day event. And someone's joining, just give me a second. And as you know, it's a 3-day hands-on event. And those who attend all the 3 days will be given a certification from GDG, a participation certificate basically. And the event is all the 3 days, that is today, tomorrow, and day after tomorrow, 24th and 25th as well. And there are absolutely no prerequisites for this event. And I hope you have installed your Flutter and have it on your system, because then it will be easier for you to follow through. And this event is being conducted by one of my really good friends, Iresh. And as much as it hurts to say this, he's absolutely great at what he does. And he's a CSC student. He's in second year, fourth semester from NIE. And he's really smart. He's really sweet. He's really helpful. So at any point, if you feel that you can't understand something or not able to follow, or you have doubts, you can definitely unmute your mic and ask him, or put your doubts in the comment section. And I'll make sure that he responds to it. So I think Iresh will go forward with the event now.
Hey guys, thank you Nitya for the introduction. Welcome all to this event. So today is the first day, and we'll basically just say hi to Flutter. So what is Flutter? Flutter is a cross-platform UI framework which lets you build apps literally everywhere. And when I say everywhere, let's talk about how. First of all, let's just talk about how to start. So to learn Flutter, the first step is to get familiar with the Dart programming language. So Flutter uses Dart as its programming language. It's a language written by Go and maintained by them. And it is, I like to call it a healthy mix of Python, JavaScript, and some TypeScript scribbled into it. But the way I'd explain it, like, in one sentence would be, it's like TypeScript with an extensive OOP. So OOP, if you guys don't know, basically stands for object-oriented programming. This is a programming genre that we'll be considering and like talking about a lot more in the coming slides. And if you're in IS and CS, you guys would be like studying OOP in detail in your fourth semester, and ECA and EEE people will be studying it in third semester. So it is a very, very important programming concept. Okay, so who uses Flutter? So I already, like, you can look at the slide. We already have BMW, Bounce, Front Row, Tencent, Dream11, and Alibaba, companies like these using Flutter in their production apps. Something very interesting about this is, we didn't mention Toyota here, but that's a very interesting story. So Flutter and Dart are maintained by Google and are open source. So in theory, you can take their source, modify it, and build it for anything. So that's what Toyota did. Toyota took the Flutter compiler and Dart compiler and modified it so that it can run Flutter natively on top of its cars. So basically, in the coming years, all the Toyota cars, the infotainment systems in them would be running Flutter natively, and all the UI would be built using, not just the UI and the logic would be built with Flutter. So that is pretty interesting, and that is very promising. So how does it work? Flutter works very differently from other cross-platform frameworks like React Native or NativeScript. What frameworks like those do is they basically tap into the native API. So basically, if you build an app, we've all seen an app, right? On top we have an app bar, then we have some scrollable content, and then in the bottom we have a nav bar. So what React Native or NativeScript or things like that would do is, as soon as you tell it to build an app bar, it would go into iOS UI Kit or Android Jetpack Compose and build a native app bar. But the way Flutter works is, Flutter basically takes the whole screen. It tells the native APIs that, see, I'm not going to use you. I'm going to paint everything on my own. So with Flutter, it's a very common phrase that's used, that Flutter gives you pixel perfect painting. So if you want, you can make your app look like a normal iOS or a normal Android app because that's there. But if you want to go crazy, you can build anything with it. You can actually draw on the screen with Flutter because it does not rely on native APIs. It basically paints on the screen. So that was a brief intro about Flutter and Dart and a few things about it. So what is the agenda? So for the 3 days, we'll be first of all learning the Dart language. Then we'll be specifically focusing on object-oriented programming. We'll build some basic widgets using the widget system and basic UIs. And then all the other stuff like the state and stateful navigation, all these things will be done using where we'll build a proper to-do app with what I believe is a really good UI. I hope you guys like it too. And if time permits, we'll be integrating it with Firebase. So that is something that I have planned, but that depends on how much time we have. Okay, so let's talk about Dart. So Dart is a modern, strictly typed language with great OOP capabilities. So like every other programming tutorial, we're going to start with Hello World. So I have Hello World already written here. And if I run this code, it'll print out Hello World. So, okay, most of you guys here would be familiar with C and C, right? Since that's part of your college curriculum. Okay. I'm guessing no one replied. I'm guessing you guys do. So a C program would look something like this. We'll have a, let's say, an include standard.io.h and then int main with some logic inside of it, right? Dart is similar, but it makes the syntax much less. So, okay, wait, we also need a return here because it's an integer type. So this is what a C program would look like. But Dart makes it much more simpler for us. We don't have
Excuse me, bro.
Yeah.
You're not sharing your screen. Like, we cannot see what you're doing.
Are you sure? Can someone else confirm?
No, it's visible only. Can you try to pin his presentation? It's probably kind of lost in the layout.
Yeah, I guess Narayani was sharing, so that happened. Screen is visible. Okay, thank you, Anusha. Okay, I'm going to continue. I'm hoping you figured it out. So, okay, so again, this is what a C program looks like. So Dart makes it very simple for us. We don't have to import any files just to run, basic hello world. What we need is a void function, which does not return anything. We name it main, and we just print hello world. Shit. With a semicolon, and that's our code. Now, if I run this, we should get hello world. Pretty basic, pretty simple. I hope you guys are running it with like along with me, and you have no problems. Okay, so cool. Now let's talk. Since in the slide, the first line in the slide says, "Oop, Dart is a modern." So we already saw the modern part of it, where we don't have to return something or import files just to print. It is a strictly typed. What do we mean by strictly typed language? Strictly typed language is where you need to define types while before compile time. Okay, so if you guys are familiar with Python, in Python, if I want to take a variable and call it and put a number in it, all I have to do is do age is equal to 18, and by default, Python itself will take age as an integer. But that is not true with Dart. So for Dart, we need to do an int. We need to specifically say that it's an integer and give it a value and a variable name. So int x is equal to 5. Now, there is something very powerful that was introduced in Flutter, not Flutter, in Dart very recently, like in February of this year, when they launched Flutter 2 and Dart 2, Dart 3.2.4. That's when they released something called Null Safety. So now this piece of code does not give me any error, apart from the fact that I've never used X. So the value of local. So if I go ahead and print X, I have no errors or warning in my code. But now, if I do this, I will get an error saying a non-nullable variable X must be assigned before it is used. What does that mean? So I have said the compiler that there's a variable integer. It's just integer. That means it cannot be null. But I have never assigned it a value and tried to use it. That means right now it is null, even though it is not supposed to be null. This is called null safety. Now the compiler won't let me run this. If I try and run, it'll just, first of all, VS Code gives me an error. But if I go ahead and debug anyway, it will not work. It'll give me errors. So that is called null safety. Now what we can do is, if for some reason I want X to be null, what I can do is I can do a int plus, int question mark. So now this X variable is nullable. Now this can have a value of null. So if I run this, it's going to print null. It works. But that's not good. We almost never want nulls in our code because null is nothing. And there cannot be nothing. If you have an app, there has to be something in it, right? If you have a variable, there has to be something in it. What are you storing? So that is why this is not a good idea. So what we should have done here is, so what this double question mark operator will do is it'll first check if X is null or not. If it is null, it'll print high, else it'll print X. So if I run this piece of code now, it should print hello world high. But now if I do X is equal to, let's say, 45, and this is already giving me a warning that since the right hand side cannot be null, we don't have to use this because we have explicitly defined it here. That's why it cannot be null. But I'm still going to run it, and we should get hello world and 40. Okay, hello world and 45, and we're getting a warning. So that's not an error, that's a warning. That's because of this. Okay, so did you guys understand till here? Did you guys get what null safety is, what strictly typed language is? Okay, I hope you're all getting everything. Cool. So now let's talk about all the basic types that Dart gives us. Okay, so this is integer. This is not what I want. So we have already talked about integer age is equal to 18. Next, we don't have a float. We have a double of height 1.8. Then we can have we don't have a character. We can have a bool of can vote. Let's by default make it false. Then we can have a string of, let's say, name, which can be John Doe. Sure, why not? Okay, so these are the basic types that Dart gives us. Now, all of these types can be nullable. So I can give a question mark to all of them, and I can make all of them nullable. Okay, any doubts still here? Anyone? Okay, no else, that's fine. So now let's talk about conditionals. So conditionals in Dart have a very, very similar syntax to C or C++ or any strictly typed language. So we just check if age is greater than 18, then you print you're eligible to vote. Else we print you're not old enough to vote. So what I can also do is I can do a can vote dot can vote is equal to not of can vote. So by default it is false, and it changes it to true. So now if I run this, okay, let me just print can vote here for string, and instead of you, let's make this name. Okay, so now if I run this, this will basically give me you are not basically give me John Doe are okay. Wait, I'm sorry. It's grammar. So this will basically print out John Doe is not old enough to vote because he is not greater than 18, which is actually incorrect. We should make this greater than equal to, and let's just keep this as 17. Cool. So let's run this. Okay, we got hello world from this line. We got a false from this line because we printed can vote dot toString, so that gives us a false. Then we got this print statement, and then we got can vote again. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change this to, let's say, 21. Okay, now let's run the code. So pretty obvious. It's a conditional. Now this condition is true, so it goes inside here. It changes the can vote ka value, and that's why you have first false and then true. Okay, so that's about it. Let's add an else if situation.
Iresh, your
Yeah.
mic is no, your screen is not visible.
Guys, can someone else confirm?
It's visible. It's visible.
Okay. Can
Try
whoever
pinning
it is,
presentation.
can you try disconnecting and connecting back?
Okay, okay.
That might fix the issue.
Also, Pradyut raised his hand.
Yeah, I think that was accidental because he instantly took it down. Pradyut?
Oh.
Pradyut? Okay. Cool. Okay. So now we have if age is greater than equal to 18, John Doe is old enough to vote. If age is greater than equal to 16, then John Doe can ride a two-wheeler. Else, he's not he's not old enough to vote, and also not old enough to ride a two-wheeler. Okay, so now if I run this statement, I should get a printout saying John Doe can ride a two-wheeler. Let's run this, and that's what we get. We still have can vote as false because this statement never ran. So again, this all of this is very basic if you know some programming language, but there might be people who haven't studied C or C++ yet, or any programming language in general. That's why we're covering all of this. Now let's talk about another kind of conditional called switch. We're going to have a similar situation here. Okay. Now with things like if, you can give proper Boolean expressions and make it and do whatever logic we want. Which switches, you can also pass in proper Boolean expressions and expect it to run. But switches are generally used when you want to check equality and you want a safe block. So what do I mean by that? So if I comment this out, and we have this code, which is switch, which is running all the logic on the variable age, which is currently at 17. If the age is 16, it prints out you're not old enough. Should be. No, never mind, not you. John Doe is old enough to ride a two-wheeler. If it is 18, he is old enough to vote. Else, he is not old enough to vote, and also not old enough to ride a two-wheeler. So now that I have 17, it will run default case. Let's just check that out. So yeah, we get the default case. The reason for that is right now this switch condition is checking for raw equality. So if I change this back to 18 and I run, it should give me, we can vote. It is checking for raw equality, and that's it. But as I said, we can put Boolean expressions here, but that's not how we use switch cases generally. Switch cases are generally used for direct comparison, direct equality checks. Okay. Did anyone get the whether this happened when someone here? Okay. Anyway, anyone, is this clear? Anyone has any doubts up till now? Okay. Yeah, you shouldn't. Like, these are all basic stuff, and I'm guessing all of you have already studied C in your college syllabus. So let's talk about loops. Now, loop syntax is awfully similar to how we have it in C++, C or C++. So, like, if I pick this up, just replace the print statement and put it in a C program, it will directly work, right? So let's just run it and see. So yeah, we get this as output. Pretty simple, pretty basic. We also have while loop. Actually, no, let me just do a okay. So we have a while loop, and if I run this code, well, I should get the exact same output again because the while loop does the same thing as for loop. Okay, so that is all in, I guess, basics of Dart. We've covered all the basics of Dart, as in the real hard basics of Dart. So does anyone have any queries, anything for now? Else I can move on to data structures like arrays and maps. Okay, doesn't look like. So okay, let's make a new file called arrays.dart. So an array in Dart is actually called list, which again calls back to the fact that Dart is a modern language. Like, all modern languages have call their arrays lists, because most of these modern languages, the arrays are actually growable. But if you recall the like the initial definition of an array is a fixed memory block in a memory block which cannot be grown, or which cannot be basically it's fixed. The size is fixed, its location is fixed. But that is not true with most of these modern languages. That's why they prefer to call it list instead of an array. Okay, so the way we create a list is list of int, and let's just say numbers is equal to, that's it. So we can just do a print on it like this, and this is wrong. So again, very simple, just like every other language. If you want to print all the elements of an array, or in this case a list, we run a loop from 0 to 1 minus the length, and we print them out. So if I run it, I should get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6. Now this all looks very similar to a C array, right? Like, we have the array declaration, we have a type of array, and we have the elements, and we have a function called length. Okay, moving on. Now I'll show you how a list in Dart is much more powerful than a normal list in C, normal array in C. So the first thing that we can do is we can do a numbers dot add, and I can add any value I want. So I'll add 345. So remember when I said growable, this is what I meant by growable. So initially we got a print of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6. But now if I run this code, I get that, and I get the last value because I added to the list. This is a feature that this is one of the features why it is not called array and it's called a list, because it's not a fixed size. It is a growable data structure. So what we can do is we can have numbers dot add all. What does this do? So basically I can pass another list inside it, and it will add all of these numbers into the list. So I don't have to run. So the common approach would be just run a for loop. So a common approach of doing that would be creating a new array called numbers2, and then using that array to basically add all these values to initial array one by one. So instead of doing that, Dart already gives us this one function, which is a replacement for this whole piece of code. Okay, this is what you get. This is again another reason why we call Dart as a modern language, because again, like various modern languages, we may consider JavaScript or we consider Python. It gives us a lot of built-in functions by default. I know you can import libraries in C and C++ to make these things happen, but here you don't have to import them. They are built in with the default list class or a list type itself. So let's just comment this and comment this. Let's try running this code. So well, you can see we get these values added later. Okay. Pretty basic stuff. Now let's move on to a few, a few more interesting features that we get with lists. So what we can do is we can have a numbers, and we can do dot any, and we pass in a function to it, which basically says element, let's say mod 2 is equal 0. And this. Okay. So what numbers.any does is it loops over the whole array and it checks this Boolean condition on them. So basically it is again like dot any is basically a way of doing this. So instead of writing, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to 10 lines of code, we can do all of that logic with one line of code. That's basically what any does. Now we have another thing called numbers.every, which does the same thing, but the only difference is it checks for all of them. So in this case, we were breaking it out, right? So as soon as we found an even number, we broke out of the list and we said that yes, there is an even number in this numbers list. But what this function does, it looks through all of them, and only if all of them are true, it returns a true. So now if I save and run, this should give me a false. Yes, because not all of them in this list are even. What I'm going to do is remove these. And let's make this an even number. Okay, can comment this out. I can comment this out. So now if I run this, I should get true. I got true twice. This two means that it has been printed twice, one after the other. So okay, you guys got the basic idea about all these functions? Okay, no queries, no errors, no issues. So we'll continue. Now I'll talk about one very, very important feature, which almost every modern language, not almost, I guess every modern language comes with. So if you see, we need to write one, and at least we need to write at least one for loop to do any to just iterate over a list, right? What these languages give us is something called a for each loop. So I can do a numbers dot for each, and I can just print element, and this way I don't have to write all of this for like basically initialize a variable, then set a condition to be less than number, and then increment. Then I don't have to do any of this. Just a for each keyword will let me do all of that. So now if I run it, it should print all the numbers one after the other, right? Pretty good, pretty perfect. A few interesting things that I would also like to cover is something called where, which lets you. So if I do a numbers dot where, and I try to do, let's say, element mod 2 is 0. I don't need a for each for this. Let's add a few non-positive numbers. Let's see what this does. Basically, it returns me a dot where would return all the elements where the given condition is true. So let's say you have a situation where you have a complex data type inside a list, and you want to find one attribute if that is true or wrong. So we have all studied about structures, right? So let's say you have a hypothetical structure inside your Dart app, and you have a list of those structures. Now you want all the structures where, let's say, the name is equal to something. So this is how you can do it. You have a simple keyword called where, and you pass in a Boolean condition that returns you an iterable. Okay, this is very useful, and we are probably going to use it in the app that we make. You're probably going to use it in all the apps that you make, like things like where and add. Any and very, you most probably won't use it. Any, maybe, like I have a couple of times found any to be handy, but very I like I don't use it very often. Okay, that is about it about the lists. So do you guys have any queries, anything? Okay, let's talk about maps. Oh shit. So remember I talked about a hypothetical structure. So we do not have a structure in Dart, but we have two ways of handling structures. One would be the object-oriented way of it, which we'll come to later, and the other would be having maps. So if any of you are familiar with JSONs or JavaScript objects, well, maps are JavaScript objects in hindsight. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to create a map, use the keyword map for that. We're going to give it a string, comma, string, sure, and have it names. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a name called John, then that guy's surname, which is Doe. Then I can have my name, Iresh, and then you can have my surname, Sharma. Then we can have, I guess, Nitya, and well, I'm just gonna call Pro. Okay, so now if I go ahead and print this, so you see autocorrect already gave me names with a box bracket of the first name. So if you use a structure, you would be doing names.jon, right? this you already see it gives me an error. It autocompletes tells me that this is going to be an error. But this is how you would be accessing properties inside a structure if you're using C or C++. But in a map, you do them using box brackets. Okay, so if I run this, I should get okay, let me switch to terminal. Yeah. Okay, so if I run this, I get do. That's because the key John had the value do. So this is a very important concept that you need to know, that these things are called key value pairs. You have a key and you have a value. So in our example, we have a key called John and we have a value called do. We have a key called Iresh and we have a value called Sharma, right? So this is called a key value pair. So if I use names with the key of John, I get the value do. Now again, these are really, really powerful because let's say you have to save a user. So a user will have properties like string name. Let's say it's going to be, again, I'm going to use my name, Iresh Sharma. And that person can have an age, integer age of, that is too much, 21. Then we can have city Bangalore and we can have well country India. Okay, so my point being, a user can have many attributes. Now for a single user, we can use 4 different properties to define a user, 4 different variables to define a user. But let's say we have a list of users. One way of storing it would be using lists. So the way we could do that is we can have a list of dynamic, and let's call it users, and actually let's call it a user, and then the first index is going to have Iresh Sharma, that's my name. The second index can have my age, third can have Bangalore, and the fourth can have India. This works. Now what we can do is we can have another list which is basically a list of dynamic users, and I can put this one user inside it, right? And now I can have like multiple users. This works, but the problem with this is now if I want to print the name of the third person, what I have to do is I have to first go to users, get the third position, and then get the 0th index. Now if I run this, I should get Iresh Sharma. Okay, now that I do it this way, it doesn't seem that wrong. But think of it, if you so if you do everything like this, you need to remember which index saves what. So right now I have a small data, I have like 4 attributes, so I know the first attribute is going to be name, second is age, and all that stuff. That is simple. But let's say you have a user with like you have a college student. That person might have about 100 properties. You cannot have them like this. So a better way of doing it would be with a map of user. So let's just remove all of, actually, let's keep this. Let's remove all of this. Take a map of string dynamic, call it user. Autocorrect is playing bad. Yeah, age 30. Okay, okay, I don't want address. Let's have a city as New York. Yeah, sure. I'd love to be there. And country as USA. Okay. So now what I can do is I can have a list which is basically a map of string comma dynamic. It is still better because now I can just put user inside it, and now what I can do is from the third user I can just get the name. Right now if I run this, it prints John Doe. this is still 100 times better than what we were doing, right? There is a better way of doing it using oops, but we'll come to that later, as I said. Now, let's talk about a few features that Dart already gives us. So let me just comment this out. One would be we can print out all the keys that a user have. So this gives us all the keys. So as we saw, user has a name, age, city, and country. That's what it gives us. We can have values. It will return us all the corresponding values. Apart from that, we can have a few other things like, so I want to do if the user dot dot has, let's say, name. If the user has a name, then print username. Else, it's not has. I don't know why my autofill is not working. It has key. It's going to error out my hash key is not defined for map. Gave me an error. Wait, let me just restart my VS Code. That's going to cause an error. Okay, it's not a big deal. We can just search map has key. Contain key. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So again, this is a perfect opportunity to tell you guys that Dart has very good documentation, even though that's not what I intended to do. But okay, you have very good documentation as well. So yeah, so now that it's checked, user has a key called name or not. If it has a key, it prints the name. Else, if I remove the key, name key here and I print, it'll print no name. So that is basics of maps, I guess. There are a few other things, but we'll learn about them as we use them in our app. Basics should be enough. So anyone has any errors by now? Any issues? Anything you wanted to ask? Okay.
Can you show the code for the map thing?
Yeah.
And also lists.
You don't have to worry about the code too much because I have all of it uploaded on GitHub. Once we're done with today's session, I'll give you guys the GitHub link and you can check out all the code there. So if you want, like, actually, once we're done, I'll give you all the code that you don't have to worry.
Okay, thank
Cool.
you.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so now let's talk about object-oriented programming. Okay, object-oriented programming, the basics of object-oriented programming lies around two things: classes and objects. So let's think of it like this. We had a user map, right? Now a map comes with its own built-in, sorry, comes with its own built-in methods like dot contain key and all that stuff. But what if I am getting name from, let's say, some XYZ place, which gives me name in a non-capitalized way, and I want to have a function on user that will automatically capitalize my name. So one way of doing that could be I can have a string function, let's say string map, which takes in a map of string comma dynamic. Let's just call it user for keeping it easy. And this is not what we want. That should be good enough. So what we can do now is we can run a print. Instead of user.getName, what we can do, we can have cap and pass user to it. Now if I run this, I get Iresh with I capital. But the problem is I need to run cap and pass a variable on it. But if you see this contains key, I can just do a user.contains key, and it gives me if the app has the name or not, if the user has a name or not. So all of those can be done using classes, and that makes our life, not life, that makes our coding experience very, very easy. So let's go ahead and try making a user class. We'll have class user with a string not optional name and an integer of age, which again is not optional, a boolean of is male, autocorrect, and a string email, which may be optional. Let's just say this person may not have a name, email. So okay, so we already made a class with these variables, right? This is the syntax of making a class. But now we want to make an object of it. What is an object? Object is basically a copy of user. So right now this might look like I can just do user.name, right? But it won't let me do that because user is a class. What I need to do is I need to use user, make a user called Iresh, and then from that I can basically do a Iresh.name is equal to user. Iresh.name is equal to Iresh. Okay. Huh. Makes sense. But what happens now is it'll still, if you see, it still gives me errors. That is because we haven't defined user yet. We go ahead and create a now what happens is it gives me an error inside while creating this. It says it needs 4 positional arguments expected, but 0 were found. That is because I am asking for all 4 of those. I need the name, the age, and if the person is male or not. I mean, if the person is a male or a female. Email is optional, so I can remove email from here. Yeah, if I remove email, there are no errors. I can just add the name as well, Iresh Sharma, and age is 21, and this is true. Now there are no errors, and if I go ahead, actually let me just put it inside a main function, and I can print Suresh.name. So if I run this file now, it should give me erase.name. Now this looks like way too much code to just print the name. But the pro of using this is now what I can do is I can create another user called John, give him similar values. I can create another user called, let's say, Maria. Right. Okay. And the best part is I can just run the same functions, use the same thing for all of them, because all of them now are of type user. So this is the basic, this is the point of OOP. You can define your own types and then have their own properties like name, John, and Maria, and all that stuff. So I can also I can do John.age, and for Maria I can do email. Okay. Now if I run this, I should get Iresh Sharma 30 and null. Why did I get a null? Anyone who can answer this? Okay. We got a null because email was never defined for Maria. We never gave a value for email. When we created the user class, we told Dart that the email string can be null because we added a question mark in front of it, telling Dart that email can be null. So it never asked us for the email. But now when I access it, since there's nothing there, it gives me a null, which is not a good way of writing programs. So what I'm going to do is going to add a null safe here and say no email found. Now if I run this, we get no email found. But if I do this every time, now for each and every user, even for John, I need to do the same thing, which is too much work. Now these are places where classes help us. What I can do is I can make email as a private variable. That means this underscore email cannot be accessed here. If I try and do a John.underscore email, one sec. Okay, and that's because it's in the same file. Let me control X this. Move this to a new file. Let's make a new file called user.dart. Put the user object here, save it to this, import it. Okay. Now if you see, if I try to access underscore email, it gives me an error. The getter underscore email isn't defined. And if I try to access email, it gives me the same error. Now, these two errors, even though they look same, they're because of a different reason. If I go ahead and open the user file here, okay, never mind. Let me just open it here. Okay, so if we do this, you can see underscore email says the underscore. Okay, sorry. The second reason dot email, it gives me an error because there's nothing called email here. But even though we have underscore email defined here, we don't get it. We still get an error that the getter isn't defined. That is because underscore, adding an underscore in front of any variable name in Dart makes it private to that file. What do I mean by that? So if I copy this code, move it here, the first warning goes away because it's in the same file. So I can access the underscore email property. But if I move it here, it'll give me an error because I cannot access. So we started all of this so that we can avoid doing a question. How do we do that? What we can do is we can have a getter. We can basically have a function which returns a string get email. It takes nothing and it basically returns underscore email with a null check telling us no email found. Now even this is giving us an error. That is because unexpected text return. So in Dart, if any function, after any function, if you use this arrow operator, which is basically an equal to and a greater than sign, that implies that whatever comes next is returned. So basically this having a function and returning email out of it is equivalent to what we just had. Is basically equivalent to this. So this arrow basically implies we are returning it. We're returning this statement. So now if I go ahead and I try to access get email, I try to call the get email function, it gives me no errors. And let me just do a Maria dot em. Okay, we can. Let's just try this first. Email over. Oh, okay, I'm running the wrong file. Sorry. In both cases, it will return an email not found, email not found. Now we are faced with another problem. If I go ahead and try to do a Maria dot underscore email is equal to Maria at gmail.com, this is going to give us an error. That is because okay. Yeah. That is because again underscore email is not defined. It's a private variable. It cannot be accessed outside the user.dart file. So the way we handle that is by creating another function, which is will make it a void function, which returns nothing. Void set email, and it will basically set the email to whatever email we pass in. So now the way of calling it would be control X this, call it set email, passing this as email, and let's go ahead and try and run it. So now if I run it, okay, user dot define. Oh, I didn't save it. Okay, my bad. If I try run it, first case, John ka get email gives me no email found because we never ran the set email function on John. But Maria ka get email gave me Maria at gmail.com because we ran the set email function. Okay, this whole concept of making a variable private and then having functions to set and get them is called encapsulation. Okay, so if you go to the slide, there are 4 pillars of OOP called encapsulation, inheritance, abstraction, and polymorphism. So encapsulation is basically hiding data. So we do a email so we made a variable private called email and we had a getter, setter and getter functions for it. This is the concept of encapsulation. Did all of you get it? Like anyone has any doubts? Email is not given. Email is not given. Okay, that is, I guess that's for answer for when I asked. Okay. Anyone has any doubts?
No.
Okay, sure. Cool. So now let's talk about inheritance. Okay, so let's say your app has grown bigger and now you have more complexity in users. Now you have two kinds of users, one called admin and the other called consumer. Okay, and admin can have a function. The admin user can have a function, can have, no, let's not call it function, can basically tell you the net worth, tell you the net purchase of the day, while the user object cannot do that, but it can buy something, while an admin using his admin account cannot buy something. Okay, does this make sense? Cool. Now how do we do that? One simple way would be creating a class called admin, having everything similar, and adding a function called void one sec, void net purchase. Let's just keep it empty for now, and then creating another class called consumer, which does not have this function. Instead, it has a function called buy. Guys, just give me 1 second. I'm getting a call. I'm very sorry, guys. I was getting a call, a very important call. Okay, so where were we? So yeah, this could be one way of doing it. Now we have two different classes called admin and consumer, which does fulfill our need. Now the admin cannot buy, but he can show us the net purchase, and the consumer cannot show us the net purchase, but it can buy. But the thing is, we have a lot of code repeating. We have these values repeating, and again, we have like these values repeating in both the classes. One of the core fundamentals of programming is dry, which means don't repeat yourself. Okay, this sounds very funny, but it is actually a very, very important programming concept. You should not ever repeat something. If you have like in an ideal world, one line of code should never be repeated, which cannot be true in all cases, but you can try to minimize your repetition as less as possible. So what we can do is, let me just undo all the code. We can have a user with all of these types, and then we can have more classes, a class called admin, which extends a user. And this guy will now have a void, will have admin, so now we can give this person a void, not buy something. We can give this person a void purchase, net purchase. So even though we have a new object, a new class called admin, this person still doesn't, we still don't have to have a get email or a set email function on it, and we don't have to repeat these. But what we do have to do is we need to take these values, this dot name, which goes in here. It'll take a name, it'll go in here, it'll take age, and it'll take his mail. And we have a semicolon missing here. So yeah. So now we do have an admin which has all the properties from above, all the functions from above, and has an extra feature called net purchase. Similarly, we can have a class called consumer, which extends user, has a similar kind of thing, and we can give him an extra function called void by something. Let's just print what something from here and print, let's say, net purchase was 45. Okay. Now, how does this help? So let's go ahead and make Iresh an admin user. Let's keep John as a normal user, and let's make Maria as a consumer. Okay. So if you see, I'm getting no errors. Iresh can still access name. John, being a user, can still have a get user. Maria, being a consumer, she still has a set email from the user class, and she has a get email. And the pro is, if I go ahead and do a Maria, I should get a buy something. But if I try to do that with John, if I do a John dot and I do a buy something, it errors out. It would not let me do that because John is of type user, which has nothing called buy something. But Maria is a type consumer, which has buy something, and it inherits name, age is male, get email, and set email from the parent user class. This whole concept of inheriting properties from a parent class is called inheritance. So that is the second pillar of OOP, or object-oriented programming. Next, we have abstraction. Let's Google what abstraction means. Abstraction is the concept of object-oriented programming that shows only essential attributes and hide unnecessary information. The main purpose of abstraction is hiding unnecessary details. Now, this definition might sound like encapsulation because that's what we're doing. We are hiding email, not letting them access underscore email everywhere, and setting methods to change it. But the difference between abstraction and encapsulation is, in abstraction we don't have these functions. So if I go ahead and remove email, get email and set email, and don't let the actual logic ever touch these things, then it'll be abstracted, it'll be hidden. Where do we use it? So let's take another example. Let me just close all of these. Let me make a folder called abstraction / let's make a bank account. So if we have a class bank account, what properties does it have? It should have an integer or a num of balance, right? And let's just so that is our bank account class, right? Now, if I have a class called file called main.dart, I make a void main. And let's say I make a bank account called Iresh account, and we don't have a create, and send in the balance as 100. I can go ahead and now obviously print Iresh account dot balance. Pretty simple, pretty easy, right? Now if I go ahead and run this, we should print 100 because that's what we set. Now, okay, one sec. Okay, so when we are creating a bank account, there can be a lot of things happening in the background. So we have a bank account dot open, which takes in this dot balance. What can be happening is, in the background, there could be a function called void submit papers. There could be a function called void approval. And there could be a function called, let's say, void. You know what? These two are enough. So what I could be doing, I could go in here and set balance. Actually, balance will automatically set itself. We don't need this dot balance itself because we are creating a bank account. We can set the balance as 0. Get an option. We can create a bank account with 0 balance, and we can have submit papers because that's what's going to happen. Actually, first we submit papers, then we get the approval, and then a bank account is open with a balance of 0. Now, this seems correct. I can just go ahead, replace that with a dot open, and now I have a bank account that opens up with 0 balance. But the problem with this is, if I go ahead and try and do a Iresh dot submit papers, Iresh account, sorry, account dot submit papers, I will be able to do that. But that should not happen. Submit papers is an operation that only happens when you open a bank account. Never ever after that or before that or anywhere in the life cycle of an account should you be able to do this. To avoid this, what we do is very simple. We make both of these things private. Now, if I go back to main.dart and if I try and do that, I would see no option to do a submit because those are hidden. Now, you may argue that this is same as encapsulation because all we did was hide these values. But no, we did hide these values, but in encapsulation, you hide the values, but you also give the user a strict way of setting values. In our case, there is no way you can change submit papers approvals, or you can what do we call run them. This is called this is called abstraction, basically hiding data. Okay, so that is abstraction. Okay, anyone has any doubts, any questions? This is pretty confusing stuff. Oops is a very vast topic and covering it up in very small portion. I am in 4th sem. I had a full subject about it, so it's, if you're getting doubts, don't be shy. It's very natural. Any questions, anyone? Okay, I guess we have a smart audience. So now let's talk about the last one called polymorphism. Let's try and read the definition. Polymorphism is the ability of an object to take many forms. The most common use of polymorphism in OOP occurs when the parent class reference is used in, doesn't make a lot of sense. Let's try this definition. In programming language and type theory, polymorphism is the provision of a single interface to entities of different types, or use the same symbol to represent multiple different types. This makes no sense until and unless you know what polymorphism is. So that's what we're going to do. Polymorphism is of two types: object overloading and the other one being runtime polymorphism. So Dart does not support object overloading, but Dart does support runtime polymorphism. What do I mean by that? So I am going to delete this whole thing. I am going to go back to our previous example, oops main, which was about user, admin, and that whole concept. So let's do this. Close this. Oop main here. Yeah. Let's close this. Okay. So if you think of it, I have explicitly said that Iresh is of type admin and Maria is of type user, and John is of type Maria is of type consumer and John is of type user. Now, if I have a function called void print name, which takes a user called user and basically just prints user.name. So in theory, since it requires a type of user, only John is the one that should be able to run this function without any issues. So if I do a print name and then pass in John, let me just comment all of this out because you don't need this. Semicolon. Let's run a dart main.dart, and it works. It prints John Doe. But the fun part is, if I go ahead and pass in Maria, I save it and I run, it still prints Maria Thomas. Why is that? This is called runtime polymorphism. Let's think of it. Polymorphism is basically made of two words. Poly, which means multi or many. Multi or many, and morphism, which means forms. basically, polymorphism is when something takes multiple forms. Now, admin and consumer are extend user, right? Admin and consumer extend user. So by transitive properties, they also take all the properties and functions of user. That is what we saw. We can an admin or a consumer also has name. They can have get and set email and all of that stuff. But what also happens behind the scenes in some languages, including Dart, is that when and where required, Dart can treat a child class as a parent class. So since it required a user type here, Dart treated Maria, which is consumer, which is a child class of user, as a parent class. So it did runtime polymorphism. At runtime, when it was running the code, this was initially this was admin, but when it hit this statement, it turned it into a user because it was able to, because it is inherited and it has all the properties of user. That is polymorphism. It is kind of difficult to digest, but I hope I did make it simple. So anyone has any doubts, it's very normal to have doubts at this point. It's all of this is a very complex topic. Anyone? Okay. So since you guys have no doubts, we're going to move on to building basic UI and widget system. So let me go ahead and close this. Go to terminal. Okay. Okay. So to create a Flutter project, what you have to do is do a Flutter create and then an app name. So we're going to go with to do app, but I already have that created, so I'm going to call it to do app event. This is going to create this is going to give me an error because we are not allowed to have capital letters. So this is going to take some time and create a project for us. Okay, now I can cd into to do app event. Let's open the code. What I'm also going to do is open a simulator. So for me, since I'm using Mac, I can do open-a simulator. But people on Windows and Chrome, you will have to run a command called Flutter emulators. Flutter emulators. This will give you a list of installed emulators. That is, so I have an iOS simulator and a Pixel simulator. So I'm going to run a iOS simulator. Then you can do a Flutter emulators hyphen launch. Hyphen launch and then the name. So I'm going to copy Apple iOS simulator and paste it, enter. So this should launch my simulator. So here we have it. Okay, let's let that build. By the time it's running, let's talk about the folder structure. So here we have a few things. Dart tool is okay. Okay.
Hey, excuse me.
Yeah.
Can you show the code which brings us a simulator?
So the first command is Flutter emulators. That should give you a list of emulators, and from there you can do this. In case you don't find any emulators, you need to open Android Studio and create one. Okay. So if you want, I can show that. If you want, I can show how to create that. Do you guys have one, or should I show how to create an emulator? If you want, I can do that.
Yeah,
Kill this. Yeah. So you can open Android Studio.
Nope, I don't have one. I guess I'll
Yeah,
have to open from
you can
Android.
create it. You can create it. You can go to Android Studio. You can go to Tools, and you should have a AVD Manager. Inside AVD Manager, see right now I have. Let me just make it short and I can zoom in. So right now I have a Pixel XL API 30. So that is one device that I have. So I can create a new device and select a phone, select all of that. So one problem that you might have is you may not have any versions of the Android API downloaded. If that's the case, I would really like a raise of hand in case you guys, none of you guys, like a lot of people don't have that. You guys can download it, set this up. We can send a video to you guys. You can set that up, and then we can continue from here tomorrow in the tomorrow session. So can you guys please do a raise of hand? How many of you have the Android Studio and a simulator installed, and how many of you don't?
I'm currently installing the simulator.
Okay, that might take some time because I guess it's 180 or 100, 200 MB big, right?
1.2 GB.
Okay, so I am guessing a lot of you people don't have it installed. Or can you guys be a little interactive and like at least tell us this? It'll be really helpful. Don't have, so two people. I don't have it. Okay, okay. So I guess let's end today's session here. You can all install an Android simulator and set it up. To once your download is done, to test it, you can run this command flutter emulators, and you must see something like Pixel XL or something similar to the second line. You'll see something similar to the second line here. Once you have that, you're set. So we'll meet tomorrow. Before we go, if any of you guys have any questions about today's uh, session, you can ask me now, and I'm going to send the GitHub link.
Can everyone just hang on? First of all, if you guys have any doubts, the today's session will be already uploaded to our YouTube channel, so you guys can go and go over it again if you guys had any doubts, and obviously you can contact Iresh at any point of time. And second of all, I'll be sending the feedback link right now. So basically, I'll be sending it at the end of each meet for the next 3 days to make sure to kind of at the end tally how many people have attended all the 3 days to end up giving them the certificate, GDG certificate. So I'll just put it up in the comment right now.
Okay, Nitya is putting the feedback form, and I have put up the GitHub link. So you would find all the examples that we did here and a little more. So you can find this divided into two parts. There's a oops overview, which will have basics of class and encapsulation. Then there's a oops in depth, which has abstraction and all that stuff put into it properly. So again, like she said, if you have any doubts, anything, you can contact me on Discord, on WhatsApp, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, wherever. I'll be happy to help.
Hey, excuse me. Are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just installed the Pixel 4 thing. It's like it got installed, but still in the terminal, I can't see it.
Because you didn't create it. You installed the sorry, one sec. Yeah, you installed the Android version, but you did not create a virtual device. So you need to go back to your AVD manager, create a device.
Okay.
And it is recommended you run it from the UI. There should be a play button. Run it with the UI once, and then try the Flutter emulators command.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's done. Yeah. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, sure.
Guys, don't forget to fill the feedback form. It's kind of important if you want your certificate at the end of 3 days. So just make sure you're filling it up. It'll be open for like 10-15 minutes now. Otherwise, the feedback form is going to get circulated throughout. And then everyone's going to fill it up. And then everyone's going to end up getting a certificate, which isn't the idea.